Welcome to the Philosophical Odysseys podcast. So I want you to imagine breaking your arm.
Okay, not a great start, but all right.
Right, yeah, bear with me. You go to the hospital, you get an x-ray, and you look up at the screen. You see that jagged white line just fracturing the bone.
Oh yeah, it's very clear.
Exactly. And the doctor just points to the screen and says, well, there it is. It's totally binary, it's objective, broken or not broken.
Right.
And the thing is, strangely, even though you are in physical pain, there is this profound comfort in that clarity. You know, we like things to be visible. We like our problems to be easily categorized and localized.
Oh, absolutely. Because you know exactly what needs to be fixed.
Exactly. But what happens when the injury isn't a fracture in your radius, but a fracture in your peace of mind?
That is the big question.
Right. What happens when the trauma is just this ambient anxiety or the creeping chaos of modern life? Suddenly that x-ray machine is completely useless.
Yeah, it doesn't help you at all.
No. You step into the psychological and philosophical landscape that just has no clear borders.
You are looking at the ultimate diagnostic muddy waters, really.
Yeah.
Because when the affliction is internal, when it's a matter of how we process reality or how we react to unpredictability, we can't point to a screen.
We can't. We just can't.
Right. We have to look inward. And that inward gaze is, well, it's incredibly daunting if you don't have a structured methodology.
It's terrifying for a lot of people.
It really is. And that is exactly where the thinkers we are exploring today step in to offer a lifeline. We aren't dealing with abstract theorizing here. We are dealing with a concrete system for diagnosing and treating the human condition.
Yes, and that brings us to our mission for today. Today's deep dive is an exploration of a very comprehensive, modern compilation of Daily Stoic meditations.
A fantastic resource.
It really is. We are pulling from a source text that takes the ancient, time-tested wisdom of Stoicism, and we're drawing from absolute historical titans like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and it translates it all into a daily practice.
Which is key, the daily aspect.
Definitely. And just to be totally clear on our mission today for you listening, the goal is not to rattle off some dry history lesson about, men in togas.
No, please no.
Yeah. We are here to extract a practical, actionable operating system for navigating the endless distractions, the economic anxieties, the interpersonal conflicts, and just the pure, unadulterated noise of the modern world.
We're looking for the software update our minds desperately need.
Exactly. The software update.
But before we begin installing that operating system, we need to completely uninstall a massive misconception. I mean, it's one that has plagued this philosophy for the better part of 2 millennia.
Oh, the robot thing.
Yes, the robot thing. If you stop the average person on the street and ask them what stoic means, they will describe an emotionless robot.
Like Spock from Star Trek or something.
Right, exactly. They picture someone who just grits their teeth, suppresses every human feeling, and stares blankly at a wall while their house burns down.
Which sounds awful, frankly.
It sounds miserable. And we need to dismantle that right now. Because this false narrative of the unfeeling Stoic, it was actually propagated heavily in the 19th century by philosophers like Arthur Schopenhauer.
Oh, interesting. Schopenhauer was the one pushing that.
Yeah, he really drove that narrative. Schopenhauer viewed the world through his own deeply pessimistic lens, so he reduced Stoicism to this rigid, unnatural exercise of pure reason that was totally divorced from the human heart.
He kind of stripped the humanity out of it.
Exactly. He essentially argued that Stoicism required deadening yourself to the vibrancy of life. But when you engage with the actual source material, when you actually read the texts, you realize Schopenhauer and mainstream culture got it completely backward.
Completely backward. The text makes it undeniably clear that the goal isn't to kill your emotions, it's to prevent your emotions from killing you.
Yes, that is a perfect way to phrase it.
It's about achieving what the Greeks called apatheia, which doesn't mean apathy in the modern sense. It means freedom from irrational and destructive passions.
Right. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about not being controlled by the feeling.
Exactly. It's an action-oriented, deeply dynamic framework for living fully. And honestly, I was frankly blown away looking at the sheer diversity of the practitioners mentioned in our source text.
The list is wild.
It is. This is a philosophy tested in the absolute extremes of human experience. We are talking about George Washington applying it to maintain his composure during the brutal winter at Valley Forge.
Which was a true test of leadership and endurance.
Unimaginable stress. And then we are talking about James Stockdale, the American fighter pilot who was shot down during the Vietnam War.
His story is just, it's unbelievable.
It really is. For those who don't know, Stockdale spent over 7 years in the Hanoi Hilton. He was subjected to routine torture, and he explicitly credits the teachings of Epictetus, which he had actually memorized, for his psychological survival.
Stockdale is perhaps the most profound modern proof of concept we have. I mean, when he parachuted into that small village and was captured, he later noted that he felt he was leaving the world of modern technology and entering the world of Epictetus.
Wow. Entering the world of Epictetus just as he's falling from the sky.
Right. He knew instantly that his physical body, his freedom, his basic human rights, all of it was completely out of his hands now.
Gone.
Yeah, gone. If he had tied his mental well-being to the hope of an early release, well, the repeated dashed hopes over 7 years would have destroyed him.
The psychological torture of maybe tomorrow would break anyone.
Exactly. So instead, he relied on the Stoic operating system to protect the one thing his captors could not touch: his moral center and his capacity to choose his response to the suffering.
That is just so powerful. And the source text demonstrates that this framework isn't just for surviving torture or, commanding armies in freezing winters.
Right. It scales to everyday life, too.
It highlights how, today, this exact same philosophy is being utilized by professional athletes navigating the pressure of millions of fans, by hedge fund managers trying to maintain rationality in volatile markets, by CEOs.
And don't forget the rappers.
Yes, even by cultural icons like LL Cool J. I mean, you don't get a lineup that bridges a Roman emperor, a prisoner of war, and a hip-hop pioneer if the philosophy just tells you to suppress your feelings.
No, you definitely don't. You get that lineup because the philosophy works. It produces results in the real world.
It provides a reliable architectural structure for dealing with the unpredictable nature of human existence.
And that architecture is what we need to unpack. The Stoics essentially built their entire framework around 3 core disciplines.
Right.
First, there's the discipline of perception, which dictates how we interpret the raw data of the world around us.
How we see things.
Exactly. Second, the discipline of action, which governs the decisions we make and the purpose behind our labor.
What we do.
Yes. And finally, the discipline of will, which provides the strength to handle the inevitable tragedies and shifts in fortune that we simply cannot change.
Okay, so let's examine that first pillar, the discipline of perception. Because the source material begins this deep dive with an entry for January 1st, establishing the bedrock foundation of all Stoic thought.
It all starts here.
Everything else we will discuss today rests on this single cognitive shift. The dichotomy of control.
But dichotomy of control, yes.
It is the rigorous, uncompromising practice of separating what is in our control from what is not.
And this is where Epictetus truly becomes the master teacher of the philosophy. I mean, to understand his perspective, you really have to remember his origins.
Right, he wasn't born royalty.
No, not at all. Epictetus was born into slavery in the Roman Empire. His very name, Epictetus, translates roughly to acquired or gained.
That's heartbreaking, just to be named like a piece of property.
It is. He lived under a master who reportedly snapped Epictetus's leg in a fit of rage, leaving him lame for the rest of his life. So when Epictetus tells you that you must separate what is yours from what is not yours, he isn't speaking from some ivory tower.
He's not just philosophizing over a glass of wine.
No, he is speaking as a man whose very physical body was legally owned by someone else. Epictetus teaches that you cannot control delayed flights, you cannot control macroeconomic shifts, you cannot control the weather.
You certainly cannot control other people's opinions of you.
Oh, absolutely not. And you absolutely cannot control the past. All of those things belong to the external world. What you can control, the only things truly in your possession, are your own choices, your own judgments, your own reasoned will.
The text draws a brilliant parallel here to a framework that is incredibly famous today. I'm talking about the Serenity Prayer, which is the cornerstone of addiction recovery circles worldwide.
Oh, it's a perfect parallel.
Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
That is pure, unadulterated stoicism right there.
It really is. Distilled into a 20th century mantra, it's Epictetus repackaged for the modern existential crisis.
And that modern application in addiction recovery is vital to understand. Because in recovery, if a person ties their sobriety to the behavior of their family members, or to keeping a specific job, or to the general fairness of the world, they will inevitably relapse.
Because the world is rarely fair and people are deeply flawed.
Precisely. Sobriety, or in the Stoic sense, tranquility, must be predicated entirely on the internal choices of the individual, totally divorced from external circumstances. The wisdom to know the difference is the mechanism that actually saves lives.
Okay, I have to push back on this, though, because I think a lot of people listening probably struggle with the daily application of this dichotomy.
It's not easy, that's for sure.
Right, because if I'm constantly trying to filter every single email, every traffic jam, every slight from a coworker into these two buckets, can I control this? Can I not control this? Yeah. Doesn't that become its own form of psychological burden?
That's a fair question. It sounds like a lot of work.
It sounds like playing a mental game of tennis, where half the balls coming at you are completely invisible and the other half are traveling at 100 miles an hour.
I like that visual.
You're just constantly swinging, analyzing the trajectory, trying to figure out which balls you are actually allowed to hit. That sounds exhausting.
The tennis analogy is vivid, but I would reframe it based on what Epictetus is actually suggesting. You aren't playing tennis against the universe.
Okay, then what am I doing?
You are standing on the court, watching a machine fire thousands of tennis balls into the stands, into the net, and out of bounds. The exhaustion you feel in daily life comes from sprinting all over the stadium, trying to dive for the balls that are entirely out of bounds.
Oh, wow.
You're getting furious at the machine for firing them poorly and screaming at the referee. What Epictetus is telling you is to stop running.
Just stop.
Stop running. Stand in your very specific square of the court. When a ball comes directly into your square, that is, when a situation actually requires your moral choice or your reasoned action, you swing. The rest of the balls, you just let them fly past you.
Okay, so it's not about analyzing every external event. It's about recognizing that almost everything is external and therefore totally irrelevant to your peace of mind.
Exactly.
So getting furious at the gate agent because a blizzard grounded your flight doesn't make the airplane take off. It just spikes your cortisol, ruins the poor gate agent's day, and strips you of your dignity.
Precisely. By trying to control the uncontrollable, you don't actually gain control. You just lose your own internal stability.
You play yourself, basically.
You really do. When you stop fighting the uncontrollable, you reclaim massive amounts of cognitive and emotional bandwidth. Right? Think about the mental energy we waste on relitigating a conversation from 3 years ago.
Oh, we all do that in the shower, just arguing with ghosts.
Right. Or stressing over what a stranger thinks of your clothes. When you apply the dichotomy of control, your daily to-do list shrinks drastically. It essentially distills down to a single mandate.
Which is?
Manage your own mind, guard your own judgments, and act with virtue right now. You leave the rest to the natural unfolding of the universe.
When you shrink the to-do list down to that single line of manage your mind, it shifts the entire burden of responsibility. You can't blame the airline anymore.
Right.
You can't blame the economy, and you can't blame your parents. You just have to look in the mirror.
It's all on you.
And if the only real task I have is managing my mind, that implies I need to be aggressively defensive about what I allow into it. It's one thing to realize I control my thoughts. It's another to protect the environment where those thoughts are formed.
Which brings us perfectly into Seneca's domain. Seneca wrote extensively about the concept of time and attention, and he issued some really stark warnings about how casually we squander both.
He really didn't mince words.
No, he pointed out a profound hypocrisy in human behavior. He noted that we are incredibly stingy with our financial wealth. If someone tries to steal $1 from us, or, encroach on our property line by a single inch, we will take them to court.
We fight tooth and nail.
We fight fiercely to protect physical property. But when it comes to our time, which is the only non-renewable resource we have, the very fabric of our finite lives, we just hand it out to anyone who asks.
It's so true.
We let people drag us into meaningless arguments. We let corporations steal our attention with trivial entertainment. We allow our minds to become dumping grounds for other people's chaos. Seneca argues that we must become misers with our time.
Misers with our time. I love that.
And we must master the immense power of the word no.
And the source text highlights that this isn't just about fending off external interruptions, right? Like someone knocking on your door. It's about fighting our own internal compulsions.
The ones that come from inside the house.
Yeah, we willingly surrender our mental autonomy to habits that seem completely harmless at first. Checking a buzzing smartphone in the middle of a deep conversation.
Guilty.
Scrolling through social media immediately upon waking up, or, and this one hit me, feeling like you are physically incapable of functioning without a highly specific, overly expensive morning coffee.
Oh, that stings a bit for a lot of people.
It does. The text provides a chilling definition of addiction in this context. It defines addiction not just as, like, substance abuse, but as the loss of the freedom to abstain.
The loss of the freedom to abstain. Wow. That is a metric we should all be measuring our daily routines against.
Yeah.
When you lose the ability to say no to your own impulses, you are no longer a free agent.
You're just a passenger in your own body.
You are being puppeted by a dopamine loop. Your mind is no longer your own. It belongs to the notification ping, the sugar craving, or the urge to complain about the news.
And what happens when we lose that freedom?
The Stoics recognized that true freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want. It is the strength to command yourself. And when we lack that self-command, when our attention is fractured by these micro-addictions, we lose the ability to see reality clearly.
We get distorted.
We start viewing the world through a distorted, highly subjective lens. And the text makes a brilliant connection here, linking ancient Stoic thought to modern behavioral economics, specifically Nassim Taleb's concept of the narrative fallacy.
I found the inclusion of the narrative fallacy totally fascinating because it perfectly diagnoses a specific trap we all fall into. For those who aren't familiar, the narrative fallacy is the human brain's desperate need to turn random, disconnected, or mundane events into a cohesive, often heroic story.
Because we hate randomness.
We are terrified of randomness. So let's say someone gets laid off from their job due to just a standard corporate restructuring. Instead of accepting the objective reality, the company had a bad quarter, my department was redundant, I was let go, they construct a grand narrative.
Oh, they spin a whole epic tale.
They tell themselves and their friends that they were targeted because they were too innovative for the stagnant management, that this is the inciting incident of their hero's journey, and that their former boss was a villain actively plotting against them.
Right, they cast themselves as the persecuted genius.
Exactly. We curate these inflated stories about our past heroics or our past victimhood because a story feeds the ego. The objective truth does not.
The ego thrives on narrative, because narrative positions you as the main character of the universe.
Oh.
But Epictetus and Taleb both warn that this is a severe vulnerability.
How so?
Because when you live inside a bubble of your own storytelling, you are operating on faulty data. You make bad decisions because you are responding to a fiction you authored, not to the world as it actually exists.
Right.
To practice the discipline of perception, you must strip away the narrative. You have to stop adding adjectives to your experience.
Marcus Aurelius took an almost aesthetic approach to this, didn't he? Because here is a man who was the emperor of Rome, constantly dealing with political betrayal, the Antonine Plague, endless wars on the Germanic frontier.
He had arguably the most stressful job on the planet.
Right, yet the text points out that in his private writings, he actively cultivated the perspective of a hyper-observant artist. He trained himself to look at mundane or even ugly things and strip away all the human judgments we usually attach to them.
He really zoomed in on reality.
He did. He wrote about finding a specific, harmonious beauty in the way a loaf of baking bread cracks open in the oven, or the specific way a ripe olive licks right before it falls from the branch, or, this one is kind of gross, even the foam on the mouth of a wild boar.
It sounds strange to us, but it is a practice of profound grounding. We usually look at the world and instantly categorize things as good or bad, ugly or beautiful, based entirely on how they affect us personally.
Right, our subjective filter.
But Marcus was training his mind to see the objective nature of things. A cracking loaf of bread isn't good or bad. It is simply matter behaving according to its nature. By observing the world with this level of detached appreciation, Marcus was teaching himself to view political crises or personal betrayals with the exact same objectivity.
So a betrayal isn't a disaster, it's just nature.
Exactly. A betrayal by a general is not a cosmic tragedy targeted at the emperor. It is simply a flawed human being acting according to their flawed nature.
See, there's a common criticism that viewing the world with objective detachment makes a person cold, clinical, or emotionally dead. But when you picture Marcus Aurelius pausing his day to deeply observe the cracking crust of a loaf of bread, that isn't cold at all.
Not at all.
It's an incredibly rich, mindful appreciation of the present moment. You aren't deadening yourself to reality. You are actually experiencing reality for the first time without projecting all of your historical anxieties and future fears onto it.
Exactly. You are witnessing the truth of the moment without the distortion of the ego. But, and this is a big but, bridging the gap between intellectually understanding that we should be objective and actually maintaining that objectivity when a crisis hits is the great challenge of the philosophy.
Because it's easier said than done.
Much easier. Human nature possesses a massive gravitational pull toward anxiety, narrative, and distraction. You don't just wake up one morning with a perfectly objective, present-focused mindset. It requires deliberate, systematic conditioning.
The Stoics didn't rely on sudden bursts of inspiration, did they?
No, they relied on highly structured, daily technologies.
And I use the word technology deliberately here because we usually think of technology as silicon chips and software, but a technology is simply a tool designed to perform a specific function. The Stoics developed cognitive technologies to shape the mind, primarily through rigid morning and evening routines.
They built psychological guardrails, basically, to keep themselves on track.
Yeah, let's walk through those.
Epictetus and Seneca approached this daily maintenance brilliantly, functioning almost like the intellectual bookends to a well-lived day. Let's look at the morning routine first.
Epictetus's territory.
All right. Epictetus insists that before you engage with the chaotic external world, you must sit down and interrogate yourself. You ask grounding questions. What do I lack to achieve freedom from passion? What do I need to do today to achieve tranquility? Who am I?
That last one, who am I, is so potent.
It is. By asking, who am I, you are reminding yourself of your fundamental nature. You are a rational being, a citizen of the world capable of reason. You are not a helpless animal driven by immediate urges. You are setting your intentions, calibrating your mental instruments before taking flight.
It's the psychological equivalent of checking your parachutes and flight coordinates before taking off.
Beautifully said, yes.
And then Seneca provides the landing sequence with his evening review. When the day's done, when all the distractions have settled down, you don't just collapse into bed or distract yourself with a TV show. You sit down in quiet reflection and you audit yourself.
An audit, yes.
Seneca would ask, what bad habit did I conquer today? What temptation did I resist? In what matter was I unjust or impatient? How can I be better tomorrow? You act as both the defendant and the judge of your own actions.
And the beauty of this evening review is that it isn't designed to induce shame.
It's not about beating yourself up.
Exactly. It is a clinical audit. If a business loses money in a quarter, the accountants don't sit around weeping about their moral failure. They look at the ledgers, identify the leak, and fix it for the next quarter. Seneca's evening routine is an accounting of the soul.
An accounting of the soul.
It requires tremendous honesty to look at your day and admit, I lost my temper with my colleague, and it was entirely my fault, driven by my own insecurity. But that honesty is the only mechanism for growth.
And the most famous example of this evening review is literally sitting on bookshelves all over the world right now. The text reminds us that Marcus Aurelius's masterpiece, Meditations, was never intended to be a published book.
Never. He would have been horrified to know we were reading it.
Right. It wasn't written for an audience. It was his private journal. He was literally just doing the Stoic evening review in his tent on the front lines of a war. He was writing to himself, processing his day, coaching himself through his frustrations with his subordinates, and reminding himself of his philosophical training.
He wasn't trying to write a timeless bestseller. He was just doing the work. He was practicing.
And that concept of practice is the crucial element that separates a philosopher from, say, an academic. Without the daily application, without the morning intentions and the evening audits, philosophy is just sophisticated trivia. It is entirely useless.
Totally useless.
Which brings me to a major grievance I have with modern self-help culture. I have to throw an analogy in here because reading the Stoics makes so much of the modern self-improvement industry feel like empty calories.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
Today, people love reading these books, highlighting quotes, and dropping philosophical buzzwords on social media to signal their intellectual depth. It is exactly like someone going to a high-end sporting goods store, buying $200 worth of cutting-edge gym clothes, putting them on, taking a mirror selfie for Instagram, and then going home without ever lifting a single weight.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
They want the aesthetic of the athlete without the sweat. They want the aesthetic of the philosopher without the discomfort of actual change.
That echoes an argument Epictetus made in the ancient world with striking similarity. I mean, Epictetus despised students who just memorized Chrysippus or Zeno to sound intelligent at dinner parties.
He called them out.
He did. He used the metaphor of a wrestler or a gymnast. He said, if I want to know if a gymnast is healthy, I don't want them to vomit up their food to show me what they ate. I don't care about the raw materials they consumed.
Which is a very visceral image.
Very. But the point is, the gymnast takes the food, digests it, metabolizes it, and shows me the result. Broad shoulders, powerful muscles, and physical strength.
So the philosophy is the food.
Exactly. The philosophy is the food. If you are just regurgitating quotes, you are vomiting up the text. You haven't metabolized anything. You must digest the teachings of perception and control and turn them into real, observable action in your daily life. Your character is the muscle.
Digest the philosophy to build broad mental shoulders. That is a brilliant visual. But that leads us directly to the next critical question. If we are digesting this philosophy to fuel our actions, what exactly are we supposed to be doing?
Right, because we don't live in a vacuum.
Exactly. We live in a highly complex society full of difficult people, competing incentives, and endless demands. How do we aim our actions correctly? This brings us to the discipline of action.
Action without a defining purpose is just thrashing around in deep water. It consumes energy but gets you nowhere.
You're just doggy paddling.
Yeah, and the source text emphasizes this by bringing in modern strategic thinking, referencing Stephen R. Covey's famous habit from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, begin with the end in mind. It also cites Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power, specifically the law that dictates planning all the way to the end.
Because if your daily actions are not tethered to a clear foundational purpose, you have no metric for decision-making.
Right. How do you know what opportunities to say yes to and which distractions to say no to? You don't. You just drift, reacting to whatever stimulus happens to be the loudest at any given moment.
And when we grift, human nature usually defaults to acting for the absolute worst reasons. Without an internal compass, we seek external validation. The text brings up a fantastic quote from the movie Fight Club to illustrate this modern sickness.
Such a great movie for philosophical diagnosis.
Right. The quote is, "We buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like." It's a funny line, but it's tragically accurate. Think about how much human action, how many hours worked, how much debt accumulated, how much stress endured, is entirely dedicated to curating a specific image for an audience of acquaintances we don't even respect. We exhaust our action on the theater of status.
And Epictetus explicitly warns against this theater. He states that when we act simply to impress others, or to gain the approval of the crowd, we completely destroy our life's purpose. We take the keys to our own tranquility and hand them over to strangers.
Which is madness when you think about it.
It is madness, because the crowd is fickle. What they praise today, they will condemn tomorrow. If your actions are designed to chase their applause, you will be perpetually anxious.
Always waiting for the next review.
Exactly. The discipline of action requires severing your behavior from the desire for external validation. You act virtuously because it is the right thing to do, not because anyone is watching. But crucially, this discipline is not just about isolated personal optimization. It is not a selfish endeavor.
Right, it's not just about becoming a lone wolf.
No, the Stoics heavily focused on our fundamental duty to our fellow human beings.
Yes, the social obligation is massive in Stoicism. Seneca has this incredibly beautiful, simple line, "Wherever there is a human, there is an opportunity for a kindness." It completely shifts the perspective on how we view interactions. Action isn't just about achieving your personal financial goals or protecting your own peace. Action is about contributing to the human community.
It absolutely is. The Stoics believed we are all parts of a larger whole, akin to limbs on a single body. To harm another is to harm yourself. To help another is to fulfill your nature.
And this brings up their perspective on wealth and status, which the text brilliantly illustrates by contrasting 2 iconic American authors, F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway.
This is a classic juxtaposition.
It is. Fitzgerald harbored a deep, romanticized obsession with the wealthy. He fundamentally believed that the rich were different from you and me, that their money insulated them, elevated them, and made them somehow inherently superior or more complex.
Right, Fitzgerald wrote about the rich with this sense of awe, almost like they were a different species living in a state of grace.
And Hemingway, who was far more pragmatic, famously mocked Fitzgerald for this delusion. When Fitzgerald said, "The rich are different from you and me," Hemingway's response was essentially, "Yes, they have more money."
So blunt, so Hemingway.
Right. He saw right through the illusion. External wealth does not alter internal character. It doesn't solve internal rot. A miserable, anxious person who wins the lottery just becomes a miserable, anxious person on a yacht.
Exactly. True wealth, the Stoics argue, is entirely internal. It is a richness of character, a mastery over one's desires, and a capacity for kindness, regardless of external circumstances. If you judge people based on their external wealth or status, you are fundamentally misreading reality.
You're reading the wrong metrics.
You are. In fact, Epictetus suggests a radical reframing of how we should view society. He says we should treat the world not as a playground for our ego or a marketplace to extract value, but as a hospital.
A hospital. That is a heady metaphor.
It is.
Treating the world as a hospital means you have to walk out your front door every day carrying a massive amount of humility. You aren't walking into the hospital as the head surgeon looking down on all the sick people around you. You are walking in as a patient.
We are all patients.
Exactly. You engage with the difficult coworker, the rude driver, or the ungrateful friend not to judge their sickness, but to use the interaction to heal your own flaws. Your impatience, your ego, your quickness to anger, those are the diseases you are trying to cure. Every frustrating interaction is just a therapeutic exercise to practice virtue.
It is the ultimate antidote to self-righteousness. When someone behaves terribly toward you, instead of matching their toxicity, you recognize that they are spiritually or philosophically unwell.
You don't cough back at a sick person?
Right. You don't get angry at a physically sick person for coughing. You shouldn't get angry at a philosophically sick person for being rude. You protect your own immunity, you offer kindness where possible, and you focus on your own treatment.
But let's be realistic about how incredibly difficult that is. What happens when doing the right thing, acting with virtue, and trying to be kind is met with absolute disaster? What happens when you put in the right action, but the world actively works against you?
When things just fall apart regardless.
Right. Your business fails despite your honest work, your health collapses despite your good habits, or someone you love is taken from you. All the right perception and all the right action cannot shield you from tragedy. That requires the final and arguably the most difficult pillar of the philosophy, the discipline of will.
This is where Stoicism graduates from a life hack into a profound, sustaining life philosophy. The discipline of will is where we encounter the concept of amor fati, the love of fate, and the fundamental acceptance of the river of change.
Amor fati, love your fate.
Exactly. To understand this, we have to grasp how the Stoics viewed the universe. They believed the cosmos was governed by a rational, organizing principle, a divine logic which they called the logos. Everything that happens according to this rational web of cause and effect.
There's a reason for it all, even if we can't see it.
Right. Therefore, when things go wrong from our limited subjective perspective, resisting that reality or complaining about it is not just futile, it is irrational.
The text uses a great visual for this. Complaining about reality is like trying to hold the wind in your hands. It is wasted energy.
Completely wasted. Instead, we must embrace the idea put forth by the pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus, who heavily influenced the Stoics. Everything is in a constant state of flux. You cannot step into the same river twice because it is not the same river, and you are not the same person.
That concept of constant, unavoidable change leads directly to one of my absolute favorite parts of the source material. It introduces the ship of Theseus paradox, originally recorded by the historian Plutarch. Let me break this down for you listening because it is a brilliant thought experiment.
Oh, I love this one.
So imagine a famous wooden ship docked in a harbor. Over the years, the wood naturally begins to rot. So a shipbuilder replaces a rotting plank with a brand new plank. A decade later, he replaces a mast. A century later, he replaces the hull. Eventually, over hundreds of years, every single original piece of wood on that ship has been removed and replaced with new wood. The paradox asks, is it still the same ship of Theseus?
It forces us to question the very nature of identity and permanence.
Exactly. And when you apply that paradox to Stoicism and human psychology, it becomes incredibly practical. Biologically, our cells are constantly dying and regenerating. Psychologically, our perspectives, our beliefs, and our neurological pathways are constantly shifting based on our experiences.
We're constantly being rebuilt.
Yes. If we are in a constant state of flux and the world around us is in a constant state of flux, why on earth do we hold on to our grievances, our grudges, and our past trauma so tightly? If someone wronged you 10 years ago, the physical person who committed that wrong is biologically a different person today.
And more importantly, you are not the same person who was wronged.
Exactly. You are clinging to a ghost. Why fight the river of change?
We fight the river because the ego demands continuity. The ego wants to hold on to the grudge because the grudge forms part of its identity. Letting go of the grievance means letting go of a piece of who we think we are.
Wow.
What's fascinating here is that the Stoic mandate to accept this constant change, to accept fate and let go of resistance, is almost universally misunderstood by modern critics.
And that is exactly where I want to jump in and challenge this idea, because I hear this critique all the time. Isn't accepting everything that happens to you just a very sophisticated philosophical form of passive surrender.
Ah, the passive surrender argument.
Right, let's use the ship analogy again. If I am sailing on the ship of Theseus and suddenly we hit a reef and there is a giant hole in the hull and the ship is taking on water, does Stoicism tell me to just sit down in my deck chair, smile peacefully at the rising water and say, I'm a fati. I love my fate. This is the logos at work. I guess I will just drown now. Because if that is the philosophy, it sounds like a recipe for victimhood.
That is the most common and perhaps the most dangerous misinterpretation of Stoicism. It conflates acceptance with passivity, when in reality, they are completely different mechanisms.
How so?
Acceptance is not passive surrender. It is the first absolute prerequisite for active improvement. Let's look at your sinking ship. If there is a hole in the hull, what does the non-Stoic do?
Panic.
They deny reality. They scream at the ocean for being unfair. They cry about how much they paid for the ticket. They look for someone to blame for steering the ship into the reef. They expend all their energy resisting the reality of the hole.
Right, they fight what has already happened.
The Stoic, on the other hand, practices immediate radical acceptance. The Stoic looks at the rushing water and says, there is a hole in my ship. The ship is sinking. This is objective reality.
Just stating the fact.
By instantly accepting the fate of a moment, the Stoic is freed from the emotional paralysis of denial and anger. That acceptance is what allows them to immediately grab a bucket and start bailing water, or grab wood to patch the hull.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The more fati doesn't mean loving the fact that your ship is sinking. It means loving the opportunity that fate has provided for you to test your resilience, to practice courage, and to take decisive action in the face of disaster.
Wow. Acceptance is what frees you to grab the bucket. That completely flips the critique on its head. You aren't rolling over for reality. You are refusing to waste time arguing with reality so that you can immediately engage with it.
Exactly. Engage with it.
And that distinction between fighting reality and engaging with reality brings us to the ultimate reality that every single human being has to engage with. The final test. Confronting our own mortality.
It is the final exam of the Stoic curriculum. Memento mori, remember that you must die.
You remember that you must die.
Both Seneca and Marcus Aurelius shared a deep, persistent obsession with mortality, not out of morbid depression, but as a tool for radical clarity. They constantly trained themselves to treat today, this very moment, as if it were their last.
And the source text poses a chilling but necessary thought experiment for you listening to this. Imagine you went to a doctor today, and the doctor looked at your test results and informed you that you have terminal cancer. You have only a few months to live. Think about how rapidly your entire life would reorient itself.
Overnight, instantly.
What petty arguments with your spouse would suddenly evaporate into nothingness? Who would you immediately call to forgive? What stressful, meaningless work projects would you abandon without a second thought?
It would clarify everything in an instant. The fog of trivial nonsense that we spend 90% of our lives stressing over would just vanish. You would only care about connection, love, and meaning.
The terminal diagnosis burns away the trivial. So the Stoic asks a very penetrating question. Why are you waiting for the tragic diagnosis to live with that clarity? You are already dying. We all are.
Seneca wrote that we are mistaken when we look forward to death, as if it is an event waiting for us in the future. He said that death is happening right now. Every second that passes, every day that we leave behind, belongs to death. You are dying slowly every single day.
That puts a serious ticking clock on things. It makes the squandering of time we talked about earlier seem not just foolish, but almost suicidal. And it completely dismantles how we typically view the concept of legacy. We are a culture obsessed with leaving a mark.
Oh, we love the idea of legacy.
We really do. The text brings in the ultimate historical irony of Alexander the Great. Here is a man who conquered the known world, slaughtered thousands, and literally named cities like Alexandria after himself, entirely driven by this ravenous craving for historical immortality. He wanted his name to live forever.
And Marcus Aurelius, who wielded arguably more power than Alexander, looked at that desire for legacy and saw it for what it truly was: sheer irrational vanity.
Pure vanity.
Marcus pointed out the logical flaw in wanting posthumous fame. He noted that the people you are so desperately trying to impress, the people who will supposedly sing your praises and remember your great deeds, they are all going to die too.
And the generation after them will die.
Exactly. The statues will crumble, the books will burn, and the empires will fall. Seeking posthumous fame is dedicating your life to impressing ghosts. Marcus compared it to being upset that people who lived hundreds of years before you were born didn't praise you. It makes no logical sense to care about the opinions of the unborn any more than the opinions of the dead.
So if building an external legacy, statues, fame, immense wealth is a trap, what are we supposed to leave behind? If we are dying every day, what is the point of the effort?
The true legacy is internal, and it is immediate. The text invokes both Seneca and the 19th century American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson to drive this point home.
Emerson, who loved the Stoics.
Heavily influenced by them. And Emerson essentially warned against being a passive consumer of philosophy. You cannot just go through life being a walking notebook filled with other people's brilliance. You can't just recite Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius or modern self-help gurus and consider yourself a wise person. You must write your own words.
Write your own words. I love that.
And you do not write those words with a pen. You write them with your choices. Your legacy is not what people say about you after you are gone. Your legacy is the character you build, the integrity you maintain, and the kindness you offer right now, today, in the present moment. That is the only thing you truly own.
Let's synthesize this entire journey. We have explored the massive architecture of this philosophy through its three disciplines: perception, action, and will. We now have the blueprint for the operating system. We know that we have to be uncompromising in separating what we can control from what we cannot, stripping away the narrative fallacy, and leaving only our own moral choices on our daily to-do list.
That's step one.
Right. We know that we cannot just consume this knowledge. We can't just wear the expensive gym clothes and take a selfie. We have to digest the philosophy into real action that builds our character. We have to aim our actions with purpose, treating the world not as an arena for our ego, but as a hospital where we heal ourselves and treat every human encounter as a chance for kindness.
That's step two.
And finally, we have to embrace the river of change. When the ship is sinking, we don't argue with the ocean. We accept the reality, we grab a bucket, and we live with the blazing clarity that our time is finite and our mortality is happening right now.
That is the complete Stoic operating system. And to build on everything we've extracted from the source text today, I want to leave you listening with a final challenge to mull over as you go about your day. Think about the specific obstacle that is frustrating you the most right at this exact moment. Maybe it's a deeply difficult coworker who constantly undermines you. Maybe it's a financial setback, a health issue, or just the overwhelming noise of your responsibilities. Instead of viewing that obstacle as a barrier keeping you from living a good life, shift your perception.
Okay, shift it how?
What if that specific frustration is exactly the raw material the universe has provided for you to practice your philosophy today? What if that difficult person is the gym equipment you need to build the muscle of patience? What if the obstacles is not in the way of your life, but it is the way?
That is a profoundly lens-shifting thought. Your frustration is not an interruption, it is the curriculum. Don't forget to follow us and subscribe to stay updated on our latest episodes and never miss a step in this odyssey of thought. Until next time, keep questioning.